Okay.
You are not.
Okay. Thank you very much, Firoz.
Thank
Thank you very much. So today we are doing the social cost and benefit. Now, this is actually a very interesting chapter. In fact, when I was, reading about it and preparing this presentation, I realized the fact that most of us, when we look at cost and benefit, we always tend to look at it from the economic point of view. What the hell is going on? Hang on. Morning, Shrestha. Okay, guys, can you hear my voice? Can you see the presentation moving?
Yes, sir. Now we can do
Okay,
that, sir.
okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Perfect. So more often than not, whenever we look at the cost and benefit, we tend to look at the economic point of view. There's a very simple reason why every time we talk about, stuff, we tend to bring in the economics of it because economic gives numbers. It's easy to understand numbers and manipulate them. For example, if I was to say, how good is the class? Most of us will, hello, most of us will try and, is somebody's microphone has gone? Hang on. Okay. Most of us will scramble to figure out what to say. If I was to say, how was the class in 1 to 5? Now we are much more comfortable in giving because numbers is more comfortable because you can quantify and manipulate. More often than not, most of the units that we have studied till now, we have seen that, whenever we talk about, and otherwise also whenever we talk about development, whenever we talk about, the contribution of immigrants, we look at it in terms of GDPs, we looking it in terms of economics, we are looking it in terms of remittances, all numbers which can be easily understood and manipulated. But always in any transaction, besides the economics of it, there is something more. And that something more is something called a social cost. So let's first understand what is social cost. And as a part of the objective, we look at two new terms, social cost and social remittances. How diaspora commit. In fact, this particular PPT, I have taken totally stuff from outside the PPT because stuff from outside the unit because the unit also was slightly biased, I thought, towards the economic side of it. I wanted to get you a separate perspective of more than the economics. You will it because these are self-learning modules. You will anyway go through it. So let's understand the social cost. Social cost is the total cost to society, includes private cost plus external cost. And again, if you notice, this example, which I have picked up from something called economic health, also is giving a dollar value because that's what we have understood all our life. We have understood the number value. So we have a personal cost. So for example, driving to work has a personal cost, which is $5 for a petrol. Because this is the US example, that's why it's in dollars. You can look at it as rupees. External cost is congestion and pollution, which they have given a cost. Mostly, most of these costs, social costs, cannot be given a dollar value or a rupee value because it's very difficult to compute. So, for example, look at the fact that when you do a job or you have a livelihood where you work, there is a cost associated to, for example, you drive down to work or you travel to work, you have your clothes, you have your food. These are costs, but there are other costs which are involved in your working. The cost which are involved in your working is possibly if you're working for 10 hours a day, that cost would be in terms of your health. How do you compute that cost on your health? How do you compute the cost on your family's health because you are not able to spend time with them? Or how do you compute the cost on your neighbors based on the fact that you might be coming late or going early? So these are all social costs. So for example, when we are building an airport, there are private costs, cost of constructing the airport and cost of paying workers to run airport. But there are external costs like noise and air pollution to those living nearby, risk of an accident to those living nearby, loss of landscape. And more often than not, every time we compute a cost, whether it's individual or whether it is public, we normally never compute the social costs of doing anything. Any activity involves a set of social costs. There is no activity which does not, because human being is a social animal. So obviously, anything that one does, there is social cost involved to it. Now, what is the importance of social? What is happening? Okay. What is the importance of social cost? Rational theory suggests individuals should only consider private costs, deciding how to travel, cost of petrol, time taken to travel. We will not take impact of environment, congestion levels. One of the reasons why we do not is it's very difficult to compute, number one. Number two, more often than not, it's stereotypical to compute private costs rather than look at the social cost. Therefore, if social costs significantly vary from private costs, then we may get a socially inefficient outcome in the free market. For example, the other day, there was this gentleman who came to my house and he was giving me, a rundown to an electric vehicle. So, for example, we could look at an electric vehicle as non-polluting, but we forget the fact that electrical vehicles are made from batteries. The batteries are made from rare minerals, which has a cost to mine and manufacture. More often than not, these rare minerals are mined in Africa, which involves forced labor, which involves child labor. Then we don't even know what is the exact cost or the social cost of creating an electric vehicle. We look at a private cost, or we look at our social cost in terms of non-polluting. It might actually, if you were trying to look at the whole cost, there is quite a possibility that if you are using an electric vehicle for very little travel, we might actually be polluting the environment more in the construction of EV rather than the usage of EV. Unless this is calculated, we do not know. So, for example, the social costs of immigrants, difficult in calculating immigrants' economic and intellectual contribution. Even economic, we can calculate in terms of their remittances. We can calculate in terms of. I was seeing this Hollywood series, an old Hollywood series called Boston Legal, in which they talk about immigrant. And, there is this case in the court where, they catch hold of this priest who's harboring an undocumented migrant. And the government argues the fact that these immigrants take up hospital space, they take up other benefits. And then the defense lawyer was saying, but they pay taxes, they do economic activity, which is again goes to the tax kitty. These are all costs. Quantifying the social cost and benefit is even more complex. Exact size of social contribution is extremely challenging. That's why we, more often than not, do this reductionist computation of economics. People instinctively grasp the societal value that immigrants provide in cuisine, arts, culture, sports, among other things. But quantifying the worth of this contribution is challenging always. So what I did was I search the net and try to see some academic articles which talk about social cost. Employers of migrant domestic workers often. So, for example, employers of migrant domestic employees often block them from connecting with their relatives, which then is a cost on the migrant. Because, for example, when the migrant is not able to speak, there is stress. The efficiency of the worker reduces. Primary issue that women migrant confirms is emotional impact of being separated. Now that's a social cost. So I have a couple of case studies which I wanted to. So there was this another flow diagram that I picked up, social cost and benefit. On one side, we have economic impact, and the other side, there are social impacts. If you see, every impact has both positive and negative sides. So, for example, positive side, economic, household income, saving, etc., etc. negative is loss of saving, loss of jobs. Similarly, social, children's education increases, family, and these are when you compute it in the totality, then we can understand whether it is good or bad, or whether it goes towards the positivity or the negativity. So one has to compute all these things before coming to a conclusion. So I got this study of cost of migration on children left behind. It's a Bangladesh case study, and it was done by the IOM in collaboration with Save the Children and Global Affairs Canada. And this is how we need to understand things. So inevitably, more often than not, most of us get swayed on the political rhetoric. The function of research and scholarly studies is basically to figure out more, to see how actually it works. So investigate and identify social cost of migration on children who are left behind when their parents, one or both, migrate internally or internationally for employment. So this was a study which looked at both internally and internationally. And while I was reading this, I was, kind of relating with what happens in India too, because I see all these migrants around me, and I was trying to relate. Impact on children associated with migration at households, discern how children, both males and females, of migrants are affected as a result of being left behind. And one of the good part is that they looked at males and females separately, because as we looked at in the other earlier units, more often than not, we look at migrants from the male point of view. Lately, researchers started looking at the fact that the women or females have a separate, nuanced thing in terms of migration. And unless we are able to study what is the result of migration on females who are either left behind or who migrate, we will not be able to have a complete picture of the whole. So they found out in the terms of patterns of expenditure, the largest amount of expenditure was spent in food, which also gives you an idea that the sample on which the study was done was poor. Because if such a large percentage of remittance was spent on food, which clearly showed that food was a major issue. Clothing. Food and clothing itself will give you an idea about the state of poverty. And if you notice, the last two are savings and plan of loan. And we have also studied in earlier loans that more often than not, migrants go into a debt trap when they have to migrate, because more often than not, the travel agents, take money upfront, put them in a debt. Most of the times they take off their debt by taking loans. There was a study in Punjab which was done, which says that the Punjab household, there's the complete Punjab household is in a debt of 10,800 crores or something in terms of sending people abroad.
Sir, could I just kindly interrupt you?
Please, please, please.
Sir, this table which you just showed, it is to do with India, is it?
No, this is the
Or
study of
Bangladesh?
Bangladesh.
Okay, Bangladesh. Okay.
So
Okay,
this you can search this study on the net. It is if you do this social cost of migration, children left behind due to labor migration. It's a whole study, and you can read about it. Thankfully, it's a PDF. I think it's a PDF file, so you can read it. You can download it, and it gives. And if you see, and interestingly, in South Asia, you look at any country in South Asia, we tend to have very similarities, and you would be able to relate immediately.
Okay. Sir, is it to do with a high population rate in the South Asian countries? Because food.
I think it's to do with the culture.
Okay,
We
okay.
are very similar culturally. We so you and that's somewhere down. It's an irony that the South Asian countries have not been able to organize themselves together to be able to ward off one major challenge which all of them face. Two major challenges: population, of course, is there, and poverty.
Okay, okay, sir. Because sir, I mean, when I see the table which says for food is related, I mean, of course, like you said, is population. Because I remember this case of a gentleman whom I know. He used to work in Qatar, and he was the boss of of a person from Kerala.
Okay.
And whenever this person, of course, his wife and children were here in India,
Hmm.
and every year they used to have another child.
Okay.
So, and because it was very funny, because he said after the third child, he said, okay, please stop. I mean, he really didn't want to interfere.
Huh.
But why I sort of can probably, it's a very basic cause, because each time the person used to come back, the another child was born.
Shrestha, there is a very interesting thing about these children and population. So more often than not, research has shown that with a higher education of the females, the population decreases. That's one. B, there is a very important role of religion and culture in this whole population game.
Okay. Yes, sir, sure.
C, healthcare facilities. But I would assume the fact, because he's talking about Kerala, education and health should be taken care of. Then there is this great component of culture which comes in.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
And more often than not, there is this, the culture plays a phenomenal part in terms of, and we will see that in social remittances. In social remittances, we will see how norms, identities, and culture are exchanged back and forth.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And very interesting part of the fact is that this again, South Asian cultures, and in fact a lot of Oriental cultures, with this emphasis on a male child, inevitably also forces couples to keep producing children till they have a male child. And I thought it was more for a rural sector, but my own immediate neighbor, educated both husband and wife, went in for a third child because they had first two girls. So for all those arguments, inevitably there are too many factors which come at play, and unless we know all the factors, more often than not, we fall into either a political rhetoric, propaganda, or reductionist arguments. There are many factors at play into what people do and why they do things. Shrestha?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, sir. This is Anjali.
Oh, hi, Anjali. Sorry.
Yeah. No problem. No problem, sir.
Okay.
So
Uh,
actually, there was this thing that, a lot of people in India, or probably in Southeast Asia as well, are educated in even in cities, but the education is used more for, a career goal, or, for finally for getting married. I mean, like they say, the more you're educated, the more probably dowry you will get, or, you'll probably get a better partner in life. So they really don't probably use this education, the civil education, for things like, thinking whether they want a boy or a girl, or making that
no,
difference.
Anjali, again, this is a slightly of a reductionist argument, because more often than not, there are other factors which come at play. So, for example, look at the fact that if the predominant society or the culture pushes for a male child, and also, let me tell you something. I a, a, a whole lot of my career has gone in teaching in girls' colleges, women colleges, and I've had a lot of teaching with girls. Now, I teach a myriad, type of subjects. And inevitably, in girls' colleges, when I would ask a question in terms of dowry, more often than not, majority of the girls were in favor of dowry. They had very interesting arguments. One of their arguments was, well, my parents' property will go to my brother. Why should I not take dowry, which is money which will come to me? Anjali?
Oh, oh, yes, sir. That's quite interesting. Yes.
So,
That makes sense, sort of sense.
so it has nothing to do with education. See, they are it's a social cost they are trying to balance out. They are trying to look at the
Okay.
fact that they are going to get married. There is this culture where they go out from the house. There is this larger, see, irrespective of the fact that the Hindu undivided inheritance law says that the money should be equally divided between the boy and the girl. More often than not, there is an it's assumed the fact that the parents' property will go to the boy.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I
And
understood.
whenever the girl stakes her claim, inevitably there is chaos in the family.
Yes, sir. That is more
So, so,
often than true.
so you need to understand that there are many more factors at play in the equation than saying that the education is not used for this or not or is used for that. Again, as I said, there is a larger society functions, and these are these societal costs which individuals have to give. So, for example, if a girl puts her foot down and say that I do not want to have a child, all hell breaks loose. Not only from her in-law side, but from her parent side. So, inevitably educated. So, there are many more things at play. As I said, these are nuanced things. Okay, so let's take this further. Let's take this further. Otherwise, this is a very big argument which you can do some other time. Anjali?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, okay. So, physical growth and development, and I picked up some areas. I didn't take the complete document. I picked up some area. Physical growth. Children of migrants were less
Uh,
healthy.
Sorry for interrupting you, sir. This is Shrestha. Um,
Shrestha.
so,
Now I get your voice, both Anjali and Shrestha. Okay, tell me.
sir, the table, can you just go back to that table once again? I just wanted to have a one look and then ask you something
Here,
from.
here.
Uh, so, sir, these are some of the categories where we are seeing like some of these expenditures, which, for instance, like if you think of if let me just pick one of them, for instance,
Please, please.
education, and then we think of the kind of categories that we are going to have for
Hmm,
social cost in particular, the kind of
hmm,
social cost that we are
hmm,
going
hmm,
as
hmm,
categories. I want to
hmm,
locate that in that terms.
hmm.
So, do you think that these categories will vary very widely for people depending on their class or depending on their social status? Because, for instance, in education, if we are looking at this as a category, the social cost being borne by poor in for educational purposes, I think it will be very it will either be very less if the education is being funded by the state in any of in any of the state where the children of these migrants are living. And for the rich, it might be very different because the rich who have migrated, and if they have which might be, I'm just imagining this scenario where a person who has migrated to a richer country, for instance, in any country, and then sending back remittances, and then again investing on their child's education. So it's going to vary significantly for it.
Definitely, definitely. Shrestha, you are absolutely right. It's going to vary significantly based on because caste, area that you're going in, the level of skill of the migrant, whether it's a single migrant or both parents are migrating, it's a lot. This particular thing has been done on this particular study.
Yes.
And
Okay.
again, the area which they have done, I have not put out the area. You can go and read which is the area, how much sample they have taken. Remember, in research, based on sample, there could be a sample bias. There could be a lot many things. So, researchers try and offset that bias with other factors.
Okay. So that was my question, that even within the categories, the variation can go like there can
Absolutely, 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 absolutely. So don't take anything in terms of research on its face value. There are many more things, even after research, which you need to find out. Again, as I said, let me reiterate for everybody, scholarly academics is point of view. These are perspectives. these give you insights into stuff. Everything is much more nuanced whenever it involves human beings, individuals. These are much more nuanced. You have to do further research. Again, this research was done during a period of time. If you increase that period of time, it might change. Also, remember, what is that period of time that is done? 6 months, 1 year. People, things can change within 6 months and a year. So maybe if the research was done over a period of what we call as a horizontal research, 10-year period, things might totally be different. Shrestha?
Okay, so that answers it. Yes.
Okay, let's carry on. So physical growth, children of migrants less healthy, height and weight compared to children of non-migrants. Factors like income, age, gender. Study finds that children of migrants are in a better situation than children of non-migrants in terms of having 3 or more meals per day. And that is because there is money now, which has come out of remittance. So you see, it gives you indicators. Why children of migrants less healthy? Possibly because nobody to see them, oversee them in terms of what they are eating. Is it nutritive? It is not nutritive. So many factors. So I'll just go through this quickly. Healthcare facilities, finding indicates migrant households were more than 2 times likely to visit private treatment. Obviously, the money is there compared to non-migrant, indicating improved access to migrant household. And inevitably, we come back to that old, discussion that we have in terms of healthcare and education, and the political rhetoric term of freebies. Actually, these are social, what we said, investment, because they have gone into the political realm as freebies. We forget to look them as an investment. In fact, these are more than an investment, because then they free up, look at, I'll give you a very interesting example of social cost. So the Delhi government came up with this scheme of allowing all women in Delhi to use the Delhi transport buses, the government buses, free. Now, the interesting part is they didn't have any condition. They said any girl, woman who wants to travel any distance can travel. Now, the point is, how do they manage this if they can't measure it? So what they did was they came out with a very smart. I wonder who thought all these things, but it was a very smart thing. What you do is, if you climb a DTC bus, they and if you're a girl or a woman, they'll give you a separate color ticket, which indicates, and based on those number of tickets, now I know how many women have traveled, which routes they have traveled, how often they have traveled, what was the peak time, what was not the peak time. And now with this measurement, I can manage. So they have done a mix of social and economic. And they also were able to figure out that because so many people have traveled, this is the welfare, budget that we have kept aside for women, and it should match with the state's budget. This is something similar what Karnataka now has done. I don't know how they are implemented it. I haven't gone and read about it. Delhi was much closer, so I was seeing this. All these things are social costs. Then again, comparative study of disease prevalence showed that children with internal migrant parent had lower probability of facing major health issues. Children of even this was a very interesting thing, possibly because of the fact internal migrant parents could come back, international parents could not come back. Possibly internal migrant parents were talking more regularly than the international migrant. I do not know. I'm speculating. So, for example, healthcare facility and hygiene, children of migrants and non-migrant families, female child are less likely to get vaccinated. This is something similar what you will see in India. More often than not, the female is less likely to be vaccinated. Female is less likely to be taken to a healthcare facility, even in India. What was there in Bangladesh? And this is where Anjali, the culture comes in. Then male
Yes, sir.
children, which seem to supplement the fact sick male child receives greater attention from caregivers than what female children receive. This is strangely even true for the Indian middle class in a lot of cases that I come across. No significant variation was observed between children with migrant parents and non-migrant parents. Uh, Significant difference between children of internal migrants and international migrants in terms of knowledge about sexual and reproductive health. Again, I do not know why. Uh, uh, Possibly the parents were talking more, uh, or possibly the parents were spending more time. Children of internal migrants showed lower tendency of knowing about this issue than children. Possibly the international migrant parents are themselves being exposed to such situations and they are talking to their children. I do not know. With no difference of insignificant difference in children of migrant. Okay. Education. Almost all children surveyed had access to school education. School authorities mentioned that they found children with migrants' father particularly difficult to discipline. Because again, you would need to understand more often than not, in poor class, both men and women are working. And pretty much the children are taking care of themselves. But when the father comes back home in the evening or night, even, for example, when I see Indians and a whole lot of people who are daily wagers, they come back drunk or, have substance, they are still there. The presence of a parent makes a difference. Issues teachers attributed to irregular means of communication with parents affecting behavioral patterns. In other areas, there was no insignificant difference between children of migrants and non-migrants. Two-thirds of children migrant parents report taking tuition outside school, making it a common practice because now they had the money. Female children more likely to be enrolled in school compared to male children and twice as likely to be awarded scholarship. This was also an interesting thing. Shows the very fact that the females across, and in fact, across caste, class, and this is what I noticed in India in my travel across various places that I visit. Everybody has understood the value of education. Not anymore that people are saying, wondering why education. Everybody wants their children to be educated. And that's a very interesting thing. Emotional and behavior changes. Parents migrate to different places within the country. Their children had significantly lower likelihood of mental background, addiction to harmful substances, comparatively greater tendencies to be introvert and disobedient compared to children with international migrant parent. It could also, remember there is a psychology about my parent is abroad. It could be that, it could be some other thing. Parental migration exert considerable social and emotional costs on left behind. This we have seen in various studies which happened. There was a lot of studies on Philippines where women leave their children behind. It emotionally scars the child. It emotionally scars the mother. Psychosocial well-being. Did I miss out something? Okay. Qualitative analysis reveals existence of communication gap between children and migrant parents. Mothers reportedly talk to their migrant husbands every day, but do not allow the children to do so. It has again to do with possibly a mobile time, whether they have a mobile, whether they have a communication facility, cost of communication. Through a regular contact is being maintained with the family, the children are at times not giving adequate opportunities to communicate. Again, we tend to forget the fact that the child has an active, psychology, uh, which needs to develop more often than not. It is still, a lot of people still believe that children do not understand things. There are research to say that 5 years onwards, children are now understanding everything. They need to be talked to. Parental separation seems to affect the psychological development of child and contribute to. So if you're looking at a social cost, when we look at the fact when people migrate and they are able to earn money, there's a social cost on the psychological development of child. It's the same thing that when we go out to do a job, and depending on how long we are outside, there's a social cost which is there for not spending time with the family. There's a cost. There's a cost to everything. Child protection and safety, common complaint from children of migrant families, onset of unhappiness when they are physically punished by teachers. Female children compared to male children had high tendency to be mentally affected when the parents physically abuse. In fact, in my PhD, when I was talking to these children in Haryana, a lot of women or a lot of girls were dropping out because of they were be getting physically punished in the schools. A lot of girls told me that they're dropping out because of that. I could never cross verify, but I know physical punishment is a common feature across government schools, even private schools. I've had incidents where you had to go and take it up with the teacher. Okay, early marriage. Female children experience more pressure for marriage through parents as well as more likely to get married before age of 16 because physical punishment, they drop out. Then who takes care? There's a pressure. There's a whole lot of societal pressure on the girl. When compared to male children, qualitative findings related to child marriage show the children of migrants were continuously getting proposal for marriage and they were under social pressure to get married. So the social pressure works, crazy things with families. Uh, Hang on. Early marriage. There were incidents of teasing and sexual harassment for female children in particular. Culmination of these factors often amount to forced early marriage of female children to ensure their safety. As migrant parents, mostly fathers, live far away. Family life begins to consider the female child as a liability and plans to marry them off. So one of the factors of delaying marriages is also some sort of safety and security. Unless that happens, inevitably there's the pressure. Then economic and material well-being. Majority of the children surveyed admitting having access to pocket money. Small proportion engaged themselves in labor through informal occupation. Had a lower likelihood of being classified as poor compared to children of non-migrants. 2/3 of the caregivers for children with migrants' parents said they had no saving whatever. So obviously poverty immediately comes out. I also picked up this case study from Philippines. We have gone through this Filipino, immigration thing where there is a lot of females who emigrate from Philippines for caregiving functions. Children are alienated for an absent parents. Transnational parenting has provided to be inadequate substitute for in-person guidance, and it leads to psychological things both for the children as far as for the mother. Juvenile delinquency, drug addiction, absenteeism. There's a whole lot of factors which come into play. Feminization of overseas labor, migration of mothers. There are traditional caregivers able to cope better with. On the other hand, left behind fathers appear to tend to have a harder time to adjust. They tend to relinquish caregiving functions to other female. Look at the disruption which this migration causes. Spawned in the families of migrant a culture of dependency, losing initiative to work and dependent. This was a factor when there was this welfareism dole, which, for example, even in India, we have been talking about. There has been a lot of debate in terms of this welfare dole which comes out. That it and there are both sides of the picture which comes about. One argument is it tends to put in a culture of dependency. So this needs to be discussed more. But in case of Philippines, in terms of migration, it brings in a sense of dependency, deliberately do not share their real work and living conditions to family back homes. And inevitably, they do not want their families back home to worry about their situation. So they were saying that they're on Facebook, they put in pictures of, what a great job they have, but actually it is much harder. Every time their families back home ask for money outside their regular remittance, they normally oblige. They would do double jobs, perform overtimes. It's a cost. It's a cost on them. There exists something called dual families, and inevitably, remember, when single males or single women are there for a long periods of time, inevitably it leads to breakdown. Dual world, the migrant seed, fellow migrant would be the best person to understand. There is an emotional or psychological situation. Migrants find solace, emotional separate, leading to kind of spousal relationship between them. So all this is another outcome of this. All these social costs and family relation are exacerbated when migrants involved are in irregular situation, and when they are in a precarious situation, that increases when they are in a irregular situation. And we have seen today, let's say, labor migration, a lot of labor migration happens on an irregular basis. It's a very difficult situation. On brain drain, the migration of highly skilled workers means not only a loss of public resources, but also reduces country of origin productivity. Brain drain problematic in education, health sector, with large outflow. In fact, that's how they are trying to tap in. That has affected the quality of health services. Government established the human resource for health network. The network developed policies of managing migration, including inclusive of principle of ethical recruitment. By that has been trying to be offset by transnationalism. So, to be able to get these people to come back and, work with them, there is something called a returning workers program and reintegration program, which is a multi-sector brain drain program. Highly skilled and professional former overseas worker. So this is what the government is trying to do. There's a Balik scientist program, allows foreign-based science and technology expert to return or reside in Philippines and share their expertise. This is how they are trying to mitigate the migration. This is what is there in terms of mitigating. Even evidence from Latin America, Africa, South Asia, and other regions suggests that remittances reduce the depth and severity of poverty, as well indirectly simulate economic activity. So that's the economic part of it. Unfortunately, with all that economics, the social cost needs to be studied more as how it works, what is happening. So then there is the second term, which is called social remittances. 2001 book, The Transnational Villagers, sociologist Peggy Levitt coined the term social remittance. 4 types of social remittances: norms, practice, identities, and social capitals. And this is a very simple thing. You are from countryside. You come into a city. Let's look at just plain India example. You are from a countryside. You come into a city. You are a young teenager. Now what do you look at? You look at, first thing that you look at is the culture, which is the dress sense, the food that you eat. And what you do is you take that back. And that is how jeans have become a normal dressing sense in all our villages. Whether it be backward or it will be a forward village. Jeans is become a standard dressing code for boys. As soon as a girl wears a jeans, she tends to be forward. How stereotypes come in. So these are this and social capital circulating. And Peggy Levitt did this in terms of Poca Canista village in Dominican Republic and Jamaica Plain, a neighborhood in Boston. And we see it across. So she studied this particular Dominican Republic migrants. 4 types of social remittances: norms, practice, identities, and social capital. Social remittance circulate in several ways when migrants return to live in or visit their community of origin. So when Punjabis from Canada come and visit Punjab, the Indian Punjab from Canada, they'll get something. And when people from the rural Indian Punjab go and visit Canada, they will pick something. When non-migrant visit their friends and family in a receiving country. Through letters, videos, email, blogs, and phone. Today, when I look at, most of us, our idea of US and Europe is based out on the Hollywood movies or the videos we watch. And that what changes. This is social remittance. About gender, politics, and religion among other are distant, but reinforced and are reinforced by other forms of global cultural circulation. So now, when there was this news item some years back about a Khap Panchayat in the state of Haryana banning chow mein. Their statement was chow mein leads to rapes. And there were a lot of urban educated middle class people who had a good laugh because they could not understand connections. Think about the fact that chow mein is a non-Indian food. It's a fast food. Chow mein allows boys and girls, that means youngsters from opposite sex, to have a quick meal. But when they have a quick meal, they come together, which is not a norm in the rural Haryana. Now that leads to marriages across, caste and jatis and gotras, which affects the political, the politics and the power equations in the rural Haryana. So it's a very interesting way how it functions. For example, people are exposed to values and behavior when they surf the internet or watch television. Social remittances that migrants bring with them challenge and transform the belief and practices of people already living in host societies, be they immigrants or native born, which in turn influences what immigrants then re-emit back home. And that's the reason why some of the NRIs in the US are much backward than Indians in India, because they carried with them culture which we have left far behind. Social remittance shake up gender and generational dynamics in ways that benefit women, migrant men and women through Latin America and Asia who work and share responsibility for house cleaning and childcare, talk about and model gender relationship different when they visit or return to their home countries. We had a similar case of those girls from Kerala who went to Germany in the 60s, and the guys from Kerala who went and joined them and married them, and some of them joined them and some came back, had major problem adjusting because the culture in Kerala was much different from what they saw in Germany. Summing up, social cost is total cost to society, includes private cost plus external cost, rational choice. Individuals should only consider private. Peggy Levitt coined the term social remittances to call attention to the fact that immigrants send home more than money. Okay, so we stop here and let me switch on my video. Hello, where is my video? Any questions? Virtual background is told you use video. Okay. Voice fine. Any questions?
So, your study on Haryana's children, these
Yeah.
were children whose parents were internal migrants.
No, Shresha, my PhD was on a community called the Mios, who stay in a very backward area of Haryana called Mewat. In fact, you would have recently come across these news items. There was these riots in Nu. Nu is the Mewat area, and there is this community called the Mios. And these Mios are a very interesting community because there are various theories about where they came from, how they came to settle out there. And the Mios trace their descent from Rajputs, but today practice Islam. And these children, they obviously a lot of the primary occupation is truck driving. So all these, a lot of their fathers are in truck driving across the country, who travel across the country. So they are not typically a migrant in the true sense of the migrant, but they are transitional. So they are not spending, the fathers are not spending too much time at their homes because they have to earn in, their livelihood because they are trucking. But the female child, a lot of female children told me that they drop out. There is this, once they come of age in terms of puberty, there's this pressure of marriage, there is eve teasing. The schools are not in close vicinity to their houses. Public transport is not. There are many factors. See, inevitably in a social situation, there is never a deterministic factor. Anytime any person comes and talks about a deterministic view of a social event happening is not totally correct, because it cannot happen. There is never a deterministic way you think. Shrestha, even you, when you take a decision, there are multiple factors which influence your decision. You can never say that this was the factor. Shrestha?
Yes, sir. Just last question. Would you consider the Mios a diasporic community in the proper sense of the term because of their this descent to this region, and then I mean they continue to live in this specific region, right? After like
So that also is a whole story. They Meos and one of the theories says the Meos and Jats were there in Sindh. Sindh actually was undivided India. Then they traveled and came to the Doab area between Ganga and Yamuna. Meos are found in MP, UP, Rajasthan, Haryana. So, and they've been there for a long period. If I was to stretch my definition of diaspora, well, they can be diaspora. But today, interestingly, there are 10 lakh Meos in India and almost 10 lakh Meos in Pakistan. So the Pakistani Meos are actually a diaspora.
okay.
Shrestha, when you look at, that's the beauty of India. When you actually start exploring, let me tell you about the Jat community. I was teaching a class where I kind of just made a statement and said Jats came to India from Central Asia. And this Jat girl was totally, freaked out. But the fact is, we don't call Jats diaspora, because over a period of time, oh, hi Shrestha, good to look at you. So a lot of communities, which if you start doing an anthropological review of a lot of communities, but that's the way the world is. As I said, the story of human race and the human story of the world is one of movement and migration. And look at how the world over, the political rhetoric is talking about anti-immigration when we are all immigrants in a way.
If may ask you a little more, because I didn't
Please.
Since we are the social cost when we are trying to look at that, and
Okay.
for people like those who are not for the internal migrants,
Okay.
the social cost which is borne by are we always calculating it in the way that it is only something that is to be confined to the migrant and their immediate relatives and family members, or is there also something, since you had all in your presentations you had also brought the environmental factors into consideration, so how do we differentiate between like them, or are they
Okay.
is it inclusive
Okay.
of all of that?
Okay, Shrestha, what you are talking about are two different costs. There is an individual social cost and there is a community social cost. Every decision of mine works at an individual level, as an individual of me, as an individual of family, and as of the society around me. So, and more often than not, when we talk about costs and we talk about remittances, we do not consider this. We never calculate that, especially costs. We do not calculate all these costs. Most of our decisions are based on rupee value economically and say, oh, let's do it. But there is a cost. For example, there's a social cost or there is an individual social cost on you taking this course vis-a-vis a management course. But you don't look at it. You look at it from, but you look at it in a particular way. You say that you look at it from the fact that if I do a management course, what is my job prospects? If I take this, what is my job? That is also a cost that you are trying to calculate. You're not giving it a rupee value, but it's a cost. So unconsciously we do it. But as a research, more effort needs to go into such cause, because then they determine whether whatever you're doing actually makes sense or does not make sense.
Namaste, sir. Can I interrupt you?
Yes, Jyoti, please.
Yeah.
And don't, for everybody, Jyoti, everybody, do
Yeah.
not start with, can I? Please interrupt. Carry on. That's the way to discuss. It will be much more productive.
Yeah.
Please tell me.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Actually, while I was working, I saw these situations when they have to plan to go somewhere, how they decide this. The first thing what I observed, that they really rely on their social networks, that where they have to go. Why?
Sorry,
Because it's again a, sorry, sir.
no, sorry, I kind of lost thought. Tell me, you
Okay.
said that people have to, when they migrate, they rely on their social networks.
Yeah, because it is also a cost-affecting thing for them.
Correct.
Because, yeah, the first thing. And then second thing, what I find that they were willing to go at that place where if they are moving with family, so they want to have a place to um, nice place for their family, I can say. Like maybe sometimes they uh, left their village because they have their internal issues, the family issues. Sometimes they left their village because they were having the religious issues sometimes. So always they move for the positive change.
Hmm.
The decision was because they will take the decision because they have to move, like for positive change. But when they reached at their destination, they faced a lots of problems which was not even imagined कि ऐसा हो सकता है कि we will be stagnant.
बराबर.
Yeah. So and then few things I admitted while I was in Sweden, and I put some bindi on my hair, my forehead.
Okay.
So people came to me, oh, you are from India, or you are from Shah Rukh Khan's place.
Oh,
DDLJ, dekha hai kya? Like, and they were Kurdish people. Mostly they were Kurdish people
okay.
who are also, I think they were immigrants at that time,
Okay.
like there in
Okay.
Sweden.
Okay.
So they have their own community, and the local Swedish people. Just a second.
Local Swedish people.
Uh, like in Swedish, because I was in Karlstad University, and uh, like I met a lots of Kurdish immigrants over there,
Okay.
and the local Swedish people, they don't like them, even they don't go and visit their places from um, like shops and all the things. From there, they purchase the things. So this kind of, I can say, discrimination I have seen um, in in uh, in in Europe too, I can say.
Jyoti,
And
it's this anti-immigration is now a generic feeling across the world. And obviously, because when you start going into the politics of identities, then inevitably all these things happen. But the example that you were talking earlier in terms of migrants going and settling down where other migrant networks are there is also, a comfort factor, because a change is always difficult. And we had seen in the earlier units that more often than not, the migrant networks are always one of the influencers in the choice of migration. whether it's internal or external.
But sir,
Sir,
I
if I
have,
could
yeah,
just, sorry. Yes, Jyoti,
no,
please
no, no,
go
no,
ahead.
no, please.
Jyoti bolo.
Yeah, because I have seen that, like, at the age of 6, how a child can decide where I have to go.
The child cannot. Unfortunately, the children have
Yeah,
no choices. They have to be dragged along, and that mentally and psychologically affects the child. And that's a
yeah.
social cost. That's a social cost.
Yeah. So I appreciate that every time you said the cost in is involved in deciding anything.
Hmm.
Yes, I admit it.
Okay.
Every time the cost is involved.
Every time. Absolutely.
Yeah, every time. Yeah. Please,
But
I don't know.
yeah, this is Abha.
Hi, Abba.
Sir,
Abba, just a second. Just a sec. Anjali was saying something before you come.
okay,
Yes, Anjali.
please, please.
Anjali.
Yes, sir. So actually, I just wanted to, extend the social cost, sir, because recently in the newspapers, it was talking about the French Premier League regarding football.
Huh.
So when, they have a large number of footballers in the French national team or even in the clubs are Africans
Hmm.
or, I mean,
Hmm.
Middle Eastern, could be
Hmm.
possibly, but Algerians, a lot of Ethiopians, things like that. So, they have said that they will not give a break to them to break their fast
Hmm.
during Ramzan.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it is not only an individual cost, but it's a social cost, a community cost in a way, because, I mean, they came there for a better life. They have given most of their lives probably because they are a second generation French citizens, so to speak.
Correct.
And even then, they're not recognized for their religious ethnicity.
I guess, as I said, it's a worldwide phenomena. Let's not go into it. There is a lot of politics which gets involved with it.
Of course. Yes, sir.
The idea of this class was more in terms of you understanding the social cost and the social remittances. Let's not go into the larger political idea
Yeah,
because
of course, sir. This was just an example I was taking up because it was in the
understand,
newspaper. I mean,
understand,
it's not to say that, in India or any
understand,
other place, it does not happen. Yes,
understand,
sir.
Anjali.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Abba, please.
No, sir, I was just also thinking, when we talk about migration here, we are talk and the issues of migration, but it also happens when uh, people have transferable jobs.
Hmm.
They are also migrating within
Hmm.
the country, but
Hmm.
they may be doing, like, I mean, just for an example, my father was an army officer. So
Hmm.
every 2 years, 2 years to 4 years, we used to move from one place, one city to another city,
Hmm.
or even one state to another state. I
Hmm.
still remember what somebody just mentioned about Bindi.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people didn't understand the whole Bindi concept, and they actually put me into the whole South Indian. While I am from an eastern state, which is Orissa, they put me into the southern state because I was black in color and I had a bindi.
You were dark in color. Don't say black. You were darker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the way, you remember, because you were in a fourth grade and people saying, oh, you
Understand.
were a South Indian. And, yeah,
Understand.
and I'm not talking about today's, it was about 40 years ago.
I know, I know. I can totally relate to whatever you're saying.
Yes. So, I mean, I was also just thinking, when we are talking about the social cost, uh, mm, while the social cost for a child is also there, uh, are we also looking at the social cost of the movement on the migrant itself?
Absolutely, absolutely. That should also be looked at in terms of, because there is an emotional cost on the migrant, there's a psychological cost. For example, what Jyoti was saying, that when you move and you find out the conditions are bad, then there is an unhygienic element onto it that puts a emotional pressure on you, which has a health incident on you. For example, in this Qatar football World Cup, many Indians and Nepali labor died because of heat. Now, that's a cost. But more often than, see, again, this unit as a self-learning unit was more in terms of you understanding that there is a cost to it. So when you are looking at migration, it's not as simple as there's a cost to going and there's a remittance which is coming. There's a social cost and there's a social remittance. The idea was that. when you then start relating it to your life and other things, then you realize that everything has a cost. Abba,
Thank you so much. I
your
think
mind.
that's very, very important to also look at it from the point of view of the migrant itself and the left behind, maybe the elderly
Absolutely,
parents and other things. And the
absolutely.
framework will have to look at when if we are wanting to do a research study or something more dig into this social cost for the migrants, we may have to devise a framework keeping all those elements in mind.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, sir.
Somebody wanted to say something? Okay, so we'll call it a day. It's already 4:11. We have extended our time. I'll see you next Saturday at 3 o'clock with the next part of this blog, and we'll take it up from there. Have a nice weekend and a nice week next Saturday at 3 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Abhay, it was very excellent, talk and discussion. I enjoyed it. I didn't interfere, but I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sada.